All right, we're going to call to order the July 27th, 2018 meeting of the AQMD Environmental Justice Advisory Group. I was misled by the clock on the wall. We're actually a few minutes after 12 o'clock. So if everyone could grab their food and their name cards and seat. We're going to start with introductions and opening remarks. I'm going to give people a second to sit down first. In case anyone has forgotten, I'm Joe Liu, the governor's appointee, the South Coast AQMD Governing Board. I thought it was 10 years, but then I looked, and it's been 11. I forgot. Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, it was 2007. It wasn't 2008 when I was appointed. Okay, so we're going to start the day and ask everyone for a moment of silence. We lost a member of our committee a couple of weeks ago, Woody Rucker Hughes, and I actually just found out myself. Derek let me know. Woody had been on this committee since its inception and provided vital information, feedback, and conversation to us over the, hi Paul. I was just saying we lost Woody, our Woody Rucker Hughes, a couple of weeks ago, and our what's her role? Public advisor, Fabian.
Fabian, yeah, and also Fabian Wesson. Her brother also passed away yesterday, I believe. So she's not attending today.
Yeah, so she won't be here today. So let's just take a moment and reflect on our friends who we've lost and our friends who have lost people close to them. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I haven't really thought of what opening comments I had for everyone. I hope they're enjoying their summer. I appreciate you guys who've made it here today. I don't think I had any formal opening comments. I would like to go around the room and do introductions. I did notice on our agenda today we mistakenly left off the item we normally have, which is community updates, but I'm certain that under legal counsel's advice, we can take up that issue under other business if anyone has updates for us. So why don't we go around the room? Maybe Derek, why don't you start?
So I'm filling in for Fabian, as you know. It's nice to come back. No updates on my part, but just want to say that AB 617 is kicking off. The board approved the selected communities, and it's going up to CARB for approval. So once we get the approval, we move forward and start monitoring in those communities.
We have an update item on that, actually.
Oh, sorry.
Item 4.
Sorry, Joke.
Okay.
Pedro, sorry. Anyways, other than that, we're good. Thank you very much.
Nancy, go.
Hi, Nancy Feldman from Legal.
Hello, my name is Alicia Rodriguez. This is my first meeting, but I will be coordinating the EJAG meetings moving forward. It's an honor to be here, and I'll make my way around the room at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
So if I could just mention, I forgot to do this, is Alicia just started with us 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, right? So she took over as the new environmental justice coordinator here at the district. She's a senior public information specialist, and she comes from a social justice organization in Santa Ana. And actually, she was also a member of our environmental justice community partnership. She was on that advisory group. And if you just want to share a couple things about yourself.
Sure. I went to UCSD, majored in international studies and political science, and also have my master's from UCSF in global health sciences. I have a lot of nonprofit experience, and I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Well, welcome, Alicia. My name is Pedro Piqueras, and I'm an air quality specialist under the Health Effects Division under Joe Gosh.
Hello, my name's Lisa Tanaka, and I'm a Community Relations Manager here at the district.
My name is David McNeil with the State of California Baldwin Hills Conservancy, and I've been serving for, I guess, a year and a half now.
Manuel Arredondo from the Coachella Valley, which is presently smoke-filled. So welcome aboard, Alicia.
I'm Kerry Doy with an environmental justice organization called PACE in LA.
My name is Retta Alexander, and I'm with Valley Interfaith Council, and welcome aboard, Alicia.
Hi, I'm Monique Hernandez, adjunct professor at Cal State LA, and I teach urban pollution, and it's very nice to meet you.
Hi, Paul Cho from Dry Cleaners Association. And we used to have over 3,000 dry cleaners in Southern California. You know, how many dry cleaners we have now? Little over 2,000. So about more than 1,000 dry cleaners went out of business. It's not from the SCAQMD regulation, it's from the economic. So, but we're still trying to meet our schedule in 2020. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Paul. Professor Hernandez, you didn't get a chance, did you? Did you introduce yourself? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Because as soon as Manny said that there was a lot of smoke in Coachella, I had to look on the map and see how it was looking, and actually it's not showing up on the PM 2.5 map for the purple air devices too badly. The rest of the LA basin is having a very tough day in terms of PM 2.5, and I'm sure that the ozone levels are way higher than anybody in our health effects office would be comfortable with. Okay, so that takes care of item number 1. We did ignore everyone down here, so please, mid-bite.
Anna, go ahead.
We'll take it to Anna first, okay?
Hi, my name is Anna Yu. I'm a staff assistant in the Legislative Public Affairs and Media Department, and I'm helping out with the environmental justice initiatives.
And I'm Brandy Keith. I'm the secretary for this group.
Thank you, Brandy. And over in the corner hiding is Paul, who you'd never hear or see anything at AQMD if it wasn't for him. Okay. Item number 2 is the meeting minutes. Has anyone taken a look? Do we have any corrections, changes, objections, fond memories, anything with regard to the...
I want to move for approval of the minutes
Okay.
as presented.
Thank you,
I
Manny.
second the motion.
We got a second. Without objection, any public comment as everyone eats their lunch? Okay. Then the minutes are approved. We're going to move through this pretty fast, I think. Lisa, you're going to talk about follow-up and action items based off what we had from last meeting.
Yeah, so I understand that there weren't any action items to follow up on. There were informational items that were provided. And this EJ, we have a couple of flyers, one in English and Spanish for an upcoming workshop, and we hope you all will join. And you can speak to Alicia here about more details for that workshop. And then just quickly for housekeeping, if y'all could give your expense claim forms to Anna, and she'll make sure they get processed in a timely fashion.
Great. Any questions, comments, anything to follow up on that? None? Item 4. So Pedro, you're going to lead us through the AB 617 updates. Maybe I just give I guess you're going to go over what AB 617 is and all of that. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I'll go over it.
Sure.
Do people usually stand? Do they sit? I sit. Oh, all right. Sounds good. No, it's good. It's good. I'll sit. No worries. I usually present standing up, but that's actually pretty cool. Sitting down. So, as I previously mentioned, my name is Pedro Piqueras, and I work in the Health Effects Division. I started working here at the district a year ago. And about 2 weeks after I started working here, AB 617 passed. So I've been here right since the beginning, and it's been a very interesting and exciting effort that AQMD has been putting together with CARB. And So just to give a little bit of background, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this effort. It's a newly passed bill that is pretty revolutionary in terms of how air pollution is addressed, because we focus in communities that are disadvantaged and environmental justice communities, and this will expand the efforts that AQMD has done in the past. We've done this sort of work before, but this is just another opportunity to keep expanding and to do the great work that we do. So, as you know, or as you may know, in order to do this, because there's limited resources, we need to identify and prioritize communities within our jurisdiction. It is an ongoing program, and the definite decision on which communities benefit or will benefit from this program will come from CARB. But we, in the early stages, we have been looking at a lot of data and a lot of community feedback to identify these communities and to prioritize them. And what the bill calls for is for community air monitoring and or community emission reduction plan. And this will depend on the community, because some communities have a lot of data already, so we can go straight into community emission reduction plans. And for some other ones, we will do some air monitoring and then an emission reduction plan. And this will improve the air within our jurisdiction. The outline of the process: back in February and May, we conducted several community meetings to seek input from the community members on how to identify these communities. The way this worked is we gave a presentation on the data, some of the data that we had, and then we had small group discussions, and we had easel boards with a couple facilitators per table, and we asked them questions such as which factors should we consider to identify communities, and what are the main air pollution concerns in your community. And this was very successful. We had a lot of people come to our meetings. And on top of that, we also received 148 nominations from 21 different communities. And what this is letters, emails, and we also put together a form that community members could fill out. It was very easy to do. You put your community name, a description of your community, and the main air pollution concern. And then you hit submit, and that was considered as a nomination. And we also received several nominations from elected officials as well, which was very helpful. Then after that, we submitted a report to CARB with all the communities that we were considering. And afterwards, in May and June, we held another set of meetings to help us prioritize the communities. And we went out there again in different locations, in environmental justice locations. And we asked the community members, what other set of information could we use to prioritize the long list that we had? And I don't know if you guys saw the previous presentations, but it was a very long list, 55 communities. And we don't have all the resources to go to all the communities at once. So we need to prioritize. And actually, we just finished the draft of the final report that we're going to send to CARB. And it will be going to CARB next week, and with our recommendations for year one communities, and with our implementation schedule, or recommended implementation schedule. And these are some photos from the community meetings. Again, they were in very diverse areas. We had a lot of people attend, and they were very successful. And actually, we got very good input that some of us had no clue about, because these community members are more knowledgeable about the air pollution issues. So it was very, very helpful in the development of our criteria. The key input that we received from an air pollution perspective was diesel sources, such as freeways, trucks, warehouses, and rail yards, as well as oil production and processing, such as well and refineries, and landfills, hazardous waste sites, and scrap yards. And from a land use perspective, a lot of people had the concern that there were a lot of schools and hospitals next to industry and freeways. And because those people or the kids and people at the hospitals are considered sensitive groups, they were recommending that we focus on areas that had a high density of those scenarios. Also, high concentration of industries, and to focus on areas that had a lack of green space. And from a population or demographic perspective, they recommended that we look at population density, the income, and that we focus on communities of color and communities that don't have a lot of access to healthcare, and also to consider asthma and cancer rates, education levels, and again, the children and the elderly as sensitive groups. So to address the diesel sources, we looked into our MATES data set, and as many as you know, MATES is the Multiple Air Toxics Exposure Study, which is a state-of-the-art study, probably the most advanced in the world, one of the most advanced in the world, that AQMD has been doing for a long time. The first MATES study was published in 1988, and we've come a long way since then. We just published MATES 4 in 2015 with 2012 data. And we took a look at this data, and as you can see, the darker areas are the ones that have a higher cancer risk per million. So what we did is we collected data through 10 monitoring stations, plus modeling and meteorological data, and we came up with a cancer risk, air cancer risk, using the OEHA methodology. And clearly, diesel is, or accounts for 2/3 of the cancer risk, and this is one of the ways that we address the community concern for diesel sources. We also took into account Coronavirus Screen 3.0, which is a screening tool that is developed by OEHA. And for those that don't know, OEHA stands for Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. And through this screening tool, we were able to address a lot of the concerns that the community members had, such as pollution exposures, such as ozone, PM 2.5, diesel PM, pesticide use, and other environmental effects such as cleanup sites, groundwater threats, etc. And this also takes into account demographic characteristics such as poverty, education attainment, and unemployment, and also sensitive populations such as people who have asthma, cardiovascular disease, and also low birth weight infants. This is a map of Coronavirus Screen 3.0. I guess the hotter the color, the higher score in Coronavirus Screen. And again, these were the areas that we focused on for during a screening. To address another concern that the community members had, we had to develop our own metric. This was quite challenging, but we think that we did a pretty good job. It was pretty thorough, and we looked at a lot of data, and developed some codes to figure out how to come up with a metric that took into account the schools near industrial and near industrial areas and freeways. And we evaluated the area within 1,000 feet of each school and daycare center that were zoned for industrial or freeways. And this was averaged per census tract. As you can see, the darker the color, the higher density, per se, of industrial areas and freeways within that 1,000 feet of the school. So with these data sets, we took at the top 25% of MATES 4 or top 25% of Coronavirus Screen 3.0, plus all the community self-recommendations that we got, and the data set from the highest density of school near facilities and industry, and we came up with our list. And this is the map of our preliminary list, like the big universe. As you can see, there's many of them in a very large area. And here is the entire list. I don't know if you've seen this before, but we could provide this to you if you would like to take a look at it. And the California Air Resources Board has mentioned publicly that they will choose 5 to 10 communities statewide for year 1. What does that mean for the South Coast? We think it would be 3 to 4 communities, but we won't know until the California Air Resources Board decides in September. So again, this list is really long. we can't get to everything the first year, so we needed to prioritize. And the way we did this was first by separating by air basin. As many as you know, the South Coast Air Basin and the Salton Sea Air Basin, which is in the Coachella Valley, have very different air pollution issues. And also, we have a lot more data in the South Coast Basin than in the Salton Sea Air Basin. And in order to be fair, we separated them into to take into account separately with different metrics because you can't compare them. They are very different scenarios, and we didn't want Coachella to be pushed all the way towards the bottom. So the way we did that was by taking into consideration top 5% for column-virus screen and top 50% for MATES 4 in the South Coast Basin. And then the Salton Sea Air Basin, we consider the local efforts and also the available data that we had, and we consider it separately. And here is a diagram that kind of summarizes the whole process. So as you can see, we started with a long list, and afterwards we separated by air basin. And within the South Coast Basin, if the communities met that criteria, the top 5% within column-virus screen, or top 50% of MATES 4, they were considered for years 1 through 5. If they didn't, they were recommended for year 6 plus. Then we evaluated several additional factors that I will talk about in the next slide. And if the communities met those factors, they were considered for year 1. If not, they were considered for year 2 to 5. And for the Salton Sea Air Basin, we consider their own factors, which I will go into detail in a little bit. The additional factors that we evaluated were past or current air monitoring, past or current air community plans or programs, and also broad-based community support. And what this means is, for year 1 community specifically, because we have such tight deadlines, we wanted to start with communities that had community groups that were ready to go, that were ready to implement this program. Because again, once CARB decides in September, October 1st is when we go. So we need this community to be ready. And as well as, communities near schools and industrial areas or freeways. As I previously mentioned, we were looking for year 1 for communities that were ready to go because we have very tight deadlines. We considered geographic diversity and diverse air pollution issues within the communities, and also the resources of local agencies, whether the local elected officials send us a recommendation, that kind of stuff. So the communities that were chosen for year 1, one of them is Wilmington, West Long Beach, and Carson. This community has been historically affected by many different air pollution sources, such as the ports, refineries, freeways, trucks, and it also has a lot of socioeconomic burdens. These communities have a large minority population, and they're relatively low income. And we've done several studies within this area, such as the FlexSense pilot study, the 710 study, and also MATES 5 advanced monitoring. And currently, we're also we're implementing Rule 1180, which is going to bring more data within this community. This community fell within the 100th percentile in MATES 4, it's the top of the top, and column-virus screen 98.8, which is pretty high up there. We received nominations from the city of Carson and Los Angeles, specifically from the Wilmington area, and also from CBE, Communities for a Better Environment. East LA, Ball Heights, is another community that was selected or were recommended to CARB for year 1. This is another community that has many socioeconomic burdens, very low income, and there's a very large minority population living in this area as well. As you know, we have the East LA interchange. We have a lot of schools near freeways. As you know, the Soto Elementary School is basically on the freeway. So there's another consideration that we took into this. This also has some industrial areas nearby. Vernon is pretty close by. And it fell within the 99.4th percentile in MATES 4 and 99.9th percentile in column-virus screen. And we received several nominations from the community members as well. San Bernardino Moscoy in the Inland Empire was another community that was selected. Again, another community that has a lot of socioeconomic burdens, low income, and large minority population. And it has several sources, such as the rail yard, a lot of warehouses in this area as well, and having the 215 and the 15 freeway right there. It's a major truck route that brings a lot of trucks. Within MATE 4, it has a lower score. It still met the criteria, because our criteria was the top 50 percentile. But then also this area, MATE 4 data is from 2012, which is right after the economic recession. So we're expecting, because we're currently collecting data for our MATE 5. And since we're currently in an economic high point, we're expecting MATE 4 to have a higher percentile in this region, because I don't know if you guys have driven on the 10 freeway, but there's a lot of trucks, and there's a lot of warehouses coming up, and we're expecting, a higher score within MATE in this region. And for coronavirus screen 3.0, it was 99.6 percentile, very high up there. We received nominations from Eloise Gomez Reyes, who is an assemblywoman in the region, and also from CCA-EJ. And the fourth community is Southgate, Huntington Park, Florence Firestone, and Walnut Park. This is home to the Alameda Corridors community with major industrial areas near home schools. SCAQMD has previously participated in the LA County Public Health Community Risk Reduction Initiative. And MATE 4, we had very high percentile in coronavirus screen as well. And the school proximity score is the highest within this community, and we received nominations from CBE. And this community will be, you see that asterisk right there? Will depend on CARB and on their decision whether funding stands. This is what we will consider. If it's 3 communities, we will consider the previous 3 communities. If it's 4 communities, we'll include this one. And the communities that we'll take into considerations for year 2 to 5, 2 to 6 are these ones. Many of them in a very diverse area throughout the 4 actually, Orange County, there's no community in Orange County for years 2 to 5, 2 to 6, but we have it in all the 3 counties. And the future steps, we will provide the final report to CARB very soon. It is due on July 31st. And then CARB will select or make the final decision on the overall statewide AB 617 strategy at the end of September, and then October 1st, we'll begin implementing. And I have a PhD in chemical engineering, and this data set was very complex and very hard to digest, even for us. So we really wanted to convey this to the community, and the way we did that was by developing this community tool, by summarizing this whole process, giving a quick background on AB 617. And if you go to our website, www.sqmd.gov/AB617, you can see the map and go through all the steps, and you can actually click on the census tracts, like where you live, where your parents live, whatever, and you can see where it falls within MATES or coronavirus screen. It's actually a very good tool, and I highly recommend it, and it really helps us convey this message to the community members, because again, it is very hard to understand and complex. And stay connected. Visit our website. We try to update our website, I wouldn't say on a weekly basis, but at least every 2 weeks. And we also post about our community meetings on our social media. So follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We need more followers. And please tell your friends and family to follow us as well. There you go. That's it.
Sorry. Thank you, Pedro. I wanted to add a little bit. I mean, you focused mostly on identifying the priority communities. AB 617, as you said, is much broader than that. It does a lot, and I think that we kind of owe it to everyone to have a conversation about why that is. Over the years, environmental justice issues and environmental equity issues have been debated in Sacramento and brought up by several legislators and advocates over the years. And when the state decided to move forward with climate policies to address greenhouse gases. Hello, doctor. We're talking about AB 617 implementation. When the state decided to put enormous amount of resources into dealing with climate issues and greenhouse gas emissions, there were concerns that the policies that were being implemented, the cap and trade program and others, would, if not address environmental justice issues, perhaps even make matters worse in certain communities. So when the proposal came up to extend the authorization for the cap and trade program at the Air Resources Board and came through the legislature last year, there was a concerted effort to have a companion bill that would address a lot of these environmental justice issues that have been raised over the years. And it sort of kind of became a collection plate of issues and items, including this proposal to identify priority communities and then work with those communities to develop emission reduction plans and implement those plans to make environmental, issues, address environmental issues within those communities as effectively as possible and quickly as possible, but also to prioritize communities for air quality monitoring, to increase the authority that this district has and other districts have to impose much higher fines on people who violate our regulations, which is something that had been tried to get through the legislature several times and never quite made it, but that was thrown into the pot here and got done. And also another one that everyone who works in these communities should be aware of, that there was a commitment to actually fund community-based organizations in these disadvantaged communities with grants. There was a $10 million appropriated last year, no, $5 million last year and $10 million this year for these grants for community organizations to work on issues related to AB 617 and the implementation of it. And so the Air Resources Board is very actively trying to spend that money and make sure that those communities are being supported through this program. So that's a little bit of the context. Anyone have any other questions or comments? Yeah, sure.
So I'd just like to add to what Dr. Liu was talking about. And to be honest, if it wasn't for the environmental groups, environmental justice groups, and champions up in Sacramento that truly believe that these communities are being not only, they call it environmental justice, but and I got this term from at our environmental justice conference by our keynote speaker, but it's environmental injustice. Danny Bakewell brought that term up, and I never thought about it, and it's actually true. But there was some real champions up in Sacramento and at the environmental justice and environmental group level that made sure that, this large pot of money from the GGRF, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, made sure that those monies were being allocated to address some of these injustices. A lot of the money, as I'm sure you're well aware of, was going towards high-speed rail, was going towards housing, which is, I don't know about the high-speed rail housing. We need to address those issues, but a big chunk of it was going to the high-speed rail, and hardly any was going towards the environmental side. But because of those champions in Sacramento, whether it be Dr. Liu and his group, the Coalition for Clean Air, other environmental justice groups, other environmental groups, I don't think we would be at this point where we're doing more advanced monitoring in communities that really need it. So what we also have to do is continue to put the pressure on Sacramento, both at the administration level as well as the legislature level, because there's new people coming in. We're going to get a new governor. We have a new pro tem in the Senate. We have an existing speaker that's been there for a while. But we got to constantly remind them this needs to get funded, and making sure that, you know, they're well aware of the injustices that are going on, and make sure that, you know, these communities are, and I'm not going to say compensated because that's not the right term, but some of the issues are addressed.
Okay, David, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I think I just had, I had a couple questions and a couple comments. Certainly, this effort is worthwhile and I guess overdue for a lot of communities. I have a question about the geographics of the areas that are being studied. They're covering a large area. In terms of capacity to deploy equipment and resources in those large areas, because it's like multiple cities overlapping. Is that something that's going to be a problem, or is that going to be easy to do?
I'm sure there will be challenges when it comes to getting to all the areas, but this is where the community members have been really helpful, is to help us identify which areas to focus on. Because let's say the city of Los Angeles is a really large city, right? But because the community members say, oh, I smell something here, or, you know, I see smoke coming out of here. Like, the community members have been helping us a lot with that. And also, we've had a lot of experience from the past, you know, we have a lot of inspectors that come out and do inspections that basically tell us where to focus on.
Okay, yeah, because I look at Wilmington, the you know, that map was like, okay, that's a large area. East LA,
yes.
Yeah. That's a large area. And, you know, if you have 10 trucks or 10 pieces of equipment and one staff person, it'll take a while to cover it. But if you focus, I suppose you get
Yeah, so this issue certainly came up in the legislature, and the legislature established actually kind of 3 pots of money. One was the pot of money for the community grants. The second was a dedicated pot of money from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, cap and trade funding, to go toward emission reduction projects. So there are, you know, grants and subsidies and incentive money for trucks and equipment and things like that. There were more strings on it last year or this year. There's fewer strings on it. And then there was a third pot of money, was implementation money for the local districts. And so we're getting a good chunk of money to do that, to hire staff, to make sure we have the resources to do it. The unfortunate part is it's a year-to-year allocation, and we're not guaranteed that every year we're going to have that money from the state to be able to do it. So we're a little concerned that to get multi-year or committed amounts so that we can be assured that we're going to have the resources over time, because there's no end to this process. I mean, we're supposed to keep doing community after community, year after year.
So you want to grab as much as you can the first year so it doesn't get, you know, you can go up from there. But then again, you have to use it, because they say you didn't use it, then you don't get it next year.
We want to use the
Oh,
public's
we're going to use it
money.
all.
We're going to use the public's money very carefully and
Yes.
very efficiently
Right.
to address these issues, and not waste a dime of it.
Oh, unfortunately not. That's not, certainly out with the state, and they watch. You get audited. It's great. The capacity of the nonprofits, and so, you know, with our agency, we have a lot of focus with Prop 68 on the severely disadvantaged communities and the disadvantaged communities. And, you know, what I've recognized over the last 5 years is working with smaller nonprofits. I don't know how the money rolls out exactly, but there's a capacity issue in terms of cash flow, reimbursement, advances, you know, an ability to do some of the things that you'd want to. And the goal is to have it end up in the hands of the people that are going to be doing the on-the-ground work, because agencies like ours can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm just heads up, you know, you'll either be giving the money to the same entities, but the goal is to try and find new entities that haven't been in the pipeline.
Yeah, and in a bit of an ironic twist, a lot of those small community groups just don't have the capacity to administer large grants. And, you know, the grants are up to $500,000. So, I mean, what we did at Coalition for Clean Air was we held back and waited to see if anyone approached us and asked us to help them, which they did. And we applied, and then we asked them, do you want us to administer it? Do you want to do it? And they asked us to. So that's the way we approached it. And I think that they're trying to figure it out, right? I mean, it's very early on in the program. But it's certainly a concern, because like you said, I mean, these small groups don't have the resources. but the grant that we were appropriated from the Air Resources Board allowed, will allow that community organization to hire two new organizers and to facilitate community meetings and get some monitoring done with very high technology, good monitoring, professional monitoring services from a consulting group. So I think it's going to work out really well, but in part, it's only because we were able to put the application together and provide that service to the community-based organization, or else it kind of never would have happened.
Yeah, and I think the nonprofit roles, the larger ones, could be the umbrella, and like you said, higher up underneath it. That's the lowest level opportunity, but it's an opportunity
I mean, and
nonetheless.
you know, they don't have audited finances or anything like that, and you know, they don't have the ability to track it and get the checks out and all that stuff. So that's our role at Coalition for
There need
Clean
to
Air.
be 10 of your community coalition, Coalition for Clean Air. Okay, that was the capacity question. Thanks for entertaining that. In terms of the list, the 55, how current is that list? Is it as of last month or this month?
That's the final.
That's it.
But it's the final preliminary list. But then for the year one, that's the 4 communities.
Okay, that's good. I mean, you're making decisions and you're moving ahead, which is fantastic. I think
So I would add to that though, this is not the end of our public outreach.
Yeah, that's
for this program. Each year we do intend to go back into the communities and do more meetings. You know, we do know that the situations do change, especially with some of the more rapidly developing inland empire communities as well. And so, you know, this is not like, oh, if you're not on the list, out of luck, right? It's really not that way. This is just, you know, we did need, for the sake of meeting these deadlines, we did need some cutoffs for the first year.
Do we have the ability to put the maps up from the internet on the screen? Oh, really? That was Paul, of course. Well, he's coming back, I think. Is that him? Anyway, yeah, Derek, if you could figure that out, or maybe when Paul comes back, it looks like he's heading back.
we've lost our eyes.
Yeah, it would be just kind of neat to see. My house gets really close, but not quite inside it on those maps, and I didn't know whether to feel good or bad about that.
And then my own last question. This is separate from SNAPS, right? This is a different program.
Right, so SNAPS is a program run by the California Air Resources Board that focuses on oil and gas sources. I would say that it seems like from ARB's perspective, they are kind of wrapping SNAPS into AB 617 in some ways. I do see that there is some overlap because there is a monitoring component of SNAPS. But I think, you know, a bigger point would be that there are a lot of programs that we have and that ARB has that really complement AB 617. And in terms of efficient use of resources, we are looking at exactly at making sure that we use these dollars wisely in the different pots that they come from.
So you could leverage possibly. There's not silo situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. That it, David? Carrie, go ahead.
Thank you. That's really interesting. I wasn't aware that things had progressed this far. I'm familiar with Cal EnviroScreen, but I'd never heard of Cal EnviroScreen 3.0. I assume that it's updated data. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Is it a different formula too?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, they tweaked both.
Okay.
And there's new factors included.
Okay.
Yeah, and more factors. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think they took any out. They just added them, right?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did
yeah,
take some out.
actually,
I
yeah,
can't
they did.
remember.
Okay. So, I mean, without getting too technical, is it possible to briefly summarize what it does?
It's a screening tool that we have put together for.
No, I understand what the screening tool is,
Yes.
but with how is it updated? Why is it 3.0 now?
Oh, why is 3.0?
Yeah.
It's just the third version.
What does it include? How is
Oh, it's the same
How is it
sort of
tweaked?
formula where they take both the vulnerability factors and the
Yes, I
the
understand.
environmental factors. So they're still doing that. It's just they've got better data. In fact, some of them they didn't have statewide data, now they do. So now they're using those factors, if I remember correctly, and things of that nature. So it's not completely different from version 1, version 2. It's just, you know, as
So
more and better data
basic
came
formula
available.
is the same. It's just with updated data.
Yeah,
I see. Okay.
yeah.
When you said that you're looking or trying to or you tried to develop priority communities and tried to identify ready-to-go communities. What does that mean?
We looked at communities that we've had some monitoring efforts in the past, that way we have data that we can base our decisions on, and also communities that are relatively ready to implement this program because we have such tight deadlines.
Implement what program?
AB 617. So October 1st, once Cabinet makes their decision, we have to implement them. We have to meet 2019 deadlines, which is just a few months. And community organizations and also local assistance is going to really help us get going on that. So that's what it means, is if we have help from the community from the get-go, that's really going to make a difference.
So we will be doing both monitoring and emission reduction plans to identify and reduce emissions from the sources that are leading to exposures to people in those communities.
So in identifying emission reduction plans, is that what ready to go means? Is that you have plans and ready to implement?
No, that we have existing relationships with those communities, so we know who to reach out to and who to work with and to develop those plans.
Okay.
There's also a requirement I skipped in AB 617 that requires a subset of our largest sources to reduce their emissions by installing the most rigorous emission control equipment for when they in their facilities. So there's also those deadlines that we're looking at. Those may overlap in those communities that we've identified, and certainly some do, especially with the refineries in Wilmington. But that's just another component of AB 617. It has a lot in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Retta.
So do I understand it correctly? The list of the first four, for example, starting with Wilmington, if there were only one or two, those are prioritized. Wilmington would be first or not?
If we only have enough money for one or two, we'll have to go back to the list of the three and decide which ones to do. But since we have half the population of the state, we expect to at least have half the number of communities. Well, we would hope to have half the number of communities, but we don't expect it. The Air Resources Board said they're going to try to prioritize 10 communities this year, and we expect probably four maximum, and the rest will be spread out across the state.
Right, but I meant if we only got one in our area,
we'd have to come back and make a decision on which one that would be.
In first to fourth priority. Okay.
No, it's within those four. Those are the ones that are being recommended to CARB.
Okay, and I think you were kind of suggesting the answer to my next question. For example, if there's a specific cause for pollution in a particular one of these communities that were identified, and the community is working to mitigate or do whatever they can, is the polluting industry also involved in the mitigation efforts or reducing emissions?
You know, we always try to be very inclusive here. So we would bring in, if it was a facility, we'd bring in that facility and talk with them and figure out what they could do, maybe work with them, maybe identify funding that would help them get to where they need to be above and beyond the regulatory requirements, or maybe impose them. We haven't done that yet. In a lot of these communities, there'll be a lot of mobile source issues, you know, from cars, trains, trucks, ships, off-road equipment, rail yards, you know, locomotives, everything. So it just kind of depends on the community, depends how much authority we have, depends how much incentive money we can raise, how much money we get from the Air Resources Board to do it, and then the process that plays out in terms of bringing together the stakeholders and trying to figure out how best to approach it. At least that's how I see it playing out. No one said it was going to be quick, easy, or uncomplicated, but at least it's going to be done in these communities that need it the most.
Can I slip in another quick question?
Absolutely.
Speaking of money, I know the AQMP requires that we somehow get $1 million a year.
$1 billion a year
$1 billion.
for 14 years.
So is
minimum
any
of
of
$1
this
billion.
money contributing to that need, or is it
Yes,
computed?
I mean, yes, in
calculated?
theory, it should. But it's not focused on, for that $1 billion, we're really focusing on a single air pollutant that has regional impacts, NOx, oxides of nitrogen. This is going to be more focused on directly on probably local impact, air toxics. Some of the things like in San Bernardino, I mean, you can't fix those problems with the smog unless you fix the problems on the west side, you know, and the ports in Orange County that all end up in San Bernardino creating ozone. But that's the $1 billion investment year after year. But we're going to be focusing on things like diesel particulate matter and air toxics and the other things that have really localized impacts.
If I could just add to that, last year, as Dr. Liu mentioned, you know, there was a companion money, AB 134 monies we got. The statewide was $250 million. Our district got $107.5 million. It was very restrictive in that it had to go to more type of projects.
Or 1B, yeah.
Or 1B, right. And so that year, last year, with those monies, it did go towards AQMP type of projects that we need to help clean up the air. This year, as Dr. Liu mentioned, it's more, you know, it's not as restrictive. So the answer is yes. Well, you know, there's some monies that may be going to we'll probably be going to stationary sources, but depending on the community and the impacts. But this goes back to, you know, if this, you know, what I said earlier, if this wants to continue, we need to get the support from Sacramento to continue this.
Okay, so can we focus in on Hawthorne, where I live? Just south of the airport. You're getting close. There we go. No, it's okay. Just go a little bit south. All right. Over to the. Oh, go west just a hair. All right. Did you? Well, I'm 3 blocks from one of the little things that stick out right there. Yeah, you're getting real close to my house there. You see where it says Glasgow Place along the freeway? I live right there. So it's just a couple blocks away from that blue area. But we can look at others too. Is that the combined one or is that? Okay, so let's go to the Cal Enviro screen and then go to the combined one. And so I looked this up and I was like, okay, well, I'm not quite there, but I'm really, really close. And so both just a couple blocks away from my house in either direction. For some reason, my community right there just is cut out, that rectangular thing. So good for us, bad for us, kind of depends on how you think about it, look at it. Do you want to look at Baldwin Hills, David? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at Baldwin Hills. Let's go a little north and, oh yeah. No, not Burlingame. Please, no.
That'd be too far north. The
No,
northern
the Baldwin
people get
Hills
enough, right?
and, oh, you had it. Los Angeles. There we go. Above that one. There we go. Well, it's interesting because Cal Enviro screen, if there's no one living there, you don't get on there. So all the park place and all the hills,
Yes.
because there's no one living there, won't show up on that. Can you zoom out just a hair? Uh-huh. Yeah,
this
it's
is
right in there.
That's the northeast part, which I think has, I mean, I'm assuming the darker
Yeah.
means more concern.
And that means overlap, right, of both. Yep.
So they're all in the high
Right,
percentage.
and
but
so you have the park and then the oil fields all wrapped up just south of there, which the reason they're not colored in is because no one lives there.
So either study, I mean, as close as your Glasgow is to the area, you're going to reap whatever benefits the air cleanup that's going to happen around you just because you're 2 blocks away, right? Doesn't.
Yeah, well, living a couple blocks from the freeway and downwind of a refinery and 2 power plants and heavily traveled roadway and all those other things. Certainly hope so.
You'll get the benefit. If there's an improvement, you'll get the
More
benefit.
worried about my kids than me, but yeah. And you too, I hope. eventually.
Yeah, I mean, everything impacts everything, and the overlay of the airport and like the freeways, the traffic, the diesel, and the oil field, there's a cumulative effect that we're just not clear on,
Anyone want to pull up a different community? Should we go to Santa Ana, Alicia? Because I know we don't have any Orange County communities on that list, and I thought you might have some suggestions.
You mentioned in your presentation that there's a vast difference between Riverside and LA.
No, the Coachella Valley or the Salton Sea Air Basin and the South Coast Air Basin, they're very different. So South Coast is more of a urban, semi-urban basin. Very different air pollution issues from the Salton Sea Air
And
Basin.
so would the charts look different? And would the maps
Yeah,
look
we can go there next
Yeah.
too.
That would be
So-
the one. I'd be curious.
So for example, when you look, let's see, if you zoom out all the way, so you can see this is top 25%, too much.
So we didn't see Mates 5 in Santa Ana, but we saw it for Calambiro Screen. That's kind of interesting. Huh? You would expect
Yeah,
that?
let's do that better. So as you can see, Mates top 25% is mainly in the
LA
highly
basin.
densely populated areas. But then when we go out here, I mean, this is Calambiro Screen, and when we go to the top 5%, so this is Mates for Calambiro Screen. Sorry, gotta zoom out again. These are the top, so the highest
Then go
priority.
east. Yeah.
If we go out to the Coachella Valley, it's a little slow. There's no communities that show up.
Mm-hmm.
And from a mate's perspective, we don't have a lot of truck traffic in this region. And Calambiro Screen, there's 2 monitoring stations, one in Indio and one in Mecca. So we are lacking data mainly in this region. So, and honestly, not just that, but it's just very different. Their main issues is PM10 from dust, from agricultural processes in the Salton Sea, which are addressed very differently than trucks and refineries and.
Okay, theirs is more natural environment, and ours is more man-made environment pollution.
Well, Salton Sea was kind of
is a
man-made.
disaster. You're right.
Accidentally.
Man-made, yes.
Right.
And now going to be unmade, and we anticipate the problems there in Coachella and Mecca getting far, far worse when it comes to those PM problems because the sea is going to be allowed to dry up.
I guess it's just an industrial as opposed to man-made.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of a lot more agriculture out there than any other region of our jurisdiction, and I think one of the areas that we do get into when it comes to air pollution issue from agriculture is with agricultural burning. So when they burn the grape stakes at the kind of post-season and so on. The Salton Sea, again, very unique issue that's really not applicable to most other parts of our basin. Windblown dust, unpaved roads, and basically just traveling on unpaved roads, like kind of a truck going by and it'll kick up a lot of dust. Again, a pretty unique issue to that area.
Let me just ask on the dust issue, do you pick up dust in the LA basin as well, or is that not on the list of things that you're looking at?
There is PM, but the sources of PM are very different. So the particulate matter from in the LA area, well, in the west side of the LA area is mainly from mobile sources and also some industry as well. In the Inland Empire secondary, as Dr. Liu was saying, a lot of the PM that forms in the Inland Empire actually comes from the west side. That is emitted as gas, and then as it travels inland, it turns into PM. And then here is, agriculture, as Joke was saying, agricultural processes in Salton Sea.
And it's more of a PM 2.5 than a PM 10 issue in the urban areas.
Right, that's also. But if you go out to the Coachella Valley, you can see that it's clearly EJ, so.
I'm gonna go to Burning Man and no.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Nice, that's up north, yeah.
In terms of opportunities for people to engage in this process, the California Air Resources Board has created a draft blueprint for implementation of AB 617. The comment deadline actually just passed Monday, past Monday. But the Air Resources Board will, I believe in September, consider both the comments on the guidelines and finalizing the draft blueprint and prioritizing the communities. So I believe their meeting is in Sacramento in September. Yes, I see some heads nodding. So, but if you're interested in that, you can certainly engage with the Air Resources Board and their staff on these issues of their blueprint for 617 implementation and their prioritization of communities.
Where in CARB should we go to
Go to that
hook up with the right
webpage.
people?
Yeah, go to the webpage, the Air Resources Board AB 617 implementation page.
Okay.
Yeah.
The implementation page.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Calling this the Community Air Protection
Yes,
Program.
right.
Community protection program. Yeah.
Which eventually the 617 will probably fade away after a number of years, and everyone will forget the bill number and just focus on the community air protection name. Any other questions, comments? Has anyone been involved in a public engagement processes that they think over their career have worked? I've been involved in a couple. The California Environmental Protection Agency did an advisory group on environmental justice when EJ issues were kind of new to the state. And I participated on that advisory committee, and there was an amazing amount of process and outreach that went in, and it worked really well. We had a ton of engagement across the state. We had meetings all up and down the state, and then at our adoption meeting in Oakland in September 2003, maybe it was, yes, I think it was September, that, there were like 250 people showed up, and hundreds of different groups, or like 100 different groups were represented there. And that process worked really well. What we need to do here at South Coast is make sure that this process continues to work in terms of public participation and engagement. So people have ideas and recommendations on processes that work, should let us know. Questions or comments? Members of the public? Okay. Pedro, thank you for that presentation.
Of course.
That's great. Let's move on. We have the other business, which in this case I think is also going to include community updates. If you have anything for us that you'd like to mention. Anyone have any community updates? None today?
Monique, you want to mention about the tour we're going to be doing with you guys?
Then Manny, you'll have something? Okay.
Yes, so we are trying to organize another environmental justice bus tour for my urban pollution class at Cal State LA. Last year was really successful. We had the electric bus come and pick us up. I think there were 2 classes we had come, maybe about 35 to 40 students. And this year we're trying to do the Port of Long Beach, to get a tour of the Port of Long Beach. On the weekends they're closed for outside groups, so we're going to see if we can do it on a Friday in October. Right now we have October 19th, and I think that'll be really exciting because I know there's a lot of green efforts at the port, and I think for the students to see that up close, it just is very impactful for them. And many of them live and come from these EJ communities themselves. So they actually, as we're going through these communities, there's like, oh, my house is right there, and they actually talk about their experience with the smells and, the health effects. So I think it's really eye-opening and a great opportunity. And it was really great that we had Pedro came along too, some other AQMD staff, to sort of talk with the students and let them know what other projects are happening. So it was a really good sort of visual for the class, and so hopefully we'll be able to do that again this year. Yeah.
Have you coordinated with Port of Long Beach? Talking to Heather or
Yeah,
Tomley?
so
Good.
they're, I don't know that we have confirmation yet, but I know that October 19th right now is the penciled in date.
Mhm.
I'm still waiting to hear for final confirmation on that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get Saturday because it'd just be easier for Monique and the students. Some of them work. So we're trying to shoot for a Saturday. I talked to Port of LA.
Oh, okay, you did.
So they're going to get back to me to see if they can get staff there. Typically, they don't have staff there.
Right.
But they're going to see if they can get something going. So I haven't heard back from them, but I'll hear back from them hopefully by next week, and hopefully we get it,
Excellent.
And
do it on a Saturday.
if you're doing the Port of Long Beach, I would also highly recommend seeing if Sylvia Bentoncourt from Long Beach Alliance for Children with Asthma, LABACA, is available to join you on the tour. She has an amazing understanding of environmental justice issues in a variety of different places, but has been working in the Long Beach area for the last several years.
Great. I'll reach out to you to get her contact.
Sure, absolutely. No problem. Thanks. Manny, did you have something?
I just wanted to maybe when somewhere along the line, we're going to have to start thinking about how we're going to mitigate or deal with this issue of forest fires that occur now they're becoming, I mean, it used to be, you get one every so often, but now it seems like a constant, we have 3 blazes going on in the near the Coachella Valley, and I know they've already ordered, alert. But somewhere along the line, there's going to be a lot of people affected. We have a more elderly population, and we are, if you go there, you can actually see it now, and you've got ash, floating in the air and things like that. And so somewhere along the line, I think we're going to have to start thinking about this if this is going to continue to be a problem, or find ways to stop or find a better way to avoid this type of fires, which just seem to get going really fast. And also, up north, we're getting more and more fires as well. And I think there's one that's already covered over 40,000 acres. And so that's quite a bit. I mean, at some point it's going to affect us, I think. And the other thing is the Salton Sea. I see a day when we will solve the issue with the Salton Sea, but in solving the issue, what's going to happen is, it's already starting, as a matter of fact. We're having a lot of people move out there to some of the communities out there. As a matter of fact, the school district is going to have to build a couple more schools out there. So, because of all the people moving out there, and it's once we solve the problem, it's going to become if we solve it the way we hope we will, it'll bring in more people coming in because of recreational use and things like that. So we'll probably qualify for the PM5 particle studies, and we'll be making the list because we do get quite a bit of traffic right now, and trucks coming from the south and from the east, and the last few weeks we've had several semi-accidents. We had one where we had 3 diesel trucks collided in the freeway, and it blocks for a long time. And then you have the whatever they are carrying, is getting into the air. So those are things that I think, need to look for in the future, since Highway 10 is a major artery here in Southern California.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like fire season doesn't stop anymore. It's year round, and it's certainly a concern. I just got invited to a presentation by Southern California Edison. The president or the head of the company is going to be talking about climate change and fire season. And I know that this last 4 weeks of the legislative session, this is one of the big issues for the utilities, is whether there's going to be some, I don't know exactly what the proposal is, but something to address the issue of fires and liability.
Yeah, they're looking to limit their liability, to have to pay out. I was in Sacramento. Wayne and I were up in Sacramento on Tuesday, and they had a joint committee meeting specifically addressing wildfire issues on everything from utility companies and their responsibility, but also just the sheer cost of who's going to pay for the wildfires. Money's got to come from somewhere, and if it's not budgeted, how are they going to pay for it? I would think, and I don't know for sure, but I would start thinking that the legislature is going to start looking at GGRF monies and send more money in that direction, because where's the money going to come from? There's not an excess of money. They have a rainy day fund, but that rainy day fund's in case of emergencies. But I think they're going to start looking at different funding options to increase the funding to fight these wildfires.
Dr. Alasan?
Right. A couple of things. First of all, just a quick medical update, which is that the very clever drug companies have figured out a way to delay even further generic preventative in asthma medication. So all inhaled preventative asthma medication is still name brand, which makes it extremely expensive, unfortunately. But we were expecting one at the end of this year, but it looks like the companies have outwitted us and are able to hold on to their patents, so there won't be anything available at least for the next year unless we get some surprises. In relation to that, I'm actually working with a consultant group. I can't say who it is because, but we're trying to procure data of what the medical needs are for different underserved communities, and we're sending out questionnaires. We're working with groups to find out what they consider the most pertinent need. Asthma and respiratory problems and the need to address those medically seem to be the highest up there. But what I've actually asked some of these groups to do is we need to know where the people are who are filling these questionnaires so we can actually correlate it better. So maybe we can bring that data to a group like this to see further what kind of environmental justice, or I like the word injustice, that was great, how that pertains to that and what we can do to address that as well. So that'll be coming up, and I'm hoping actually, let's say next 6 to 9 months, maybe I can present some data to this group, I'm hoping.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Would appreciate that. Wonderful. Retta, you no longer have the comment or question. Okay. Any other business that we needed to discuss today? Okay. That takes us to public comment, which it appears we have no public comment. We're going to adjourn early today and put everybody back on the road. Manny, I'm sorry to send you back to Coachella in these conditions, but you're welcome to stay here as long as you want and breathe our air-conditioned air. Our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 26th. It'll be our Halloween preview special right here at noon, and I assume we're going to be meeting right here in this room. So thank you all again for coming and visiting, and nice getting the checkups from everyone and the check-ins, and thanks again to the staff for telling us about all things AB 617. We're adjourned.